Good evening from Cairo, and good morning and good afternoon in other parts of the world. I I'm very grateful, and I really welcome everyone who joined us, who's following us, and all the esteemed speakers. And I really want to thank Purview for moderating this session. Thank you very much. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Um, I just want to say that I will just be here for a short period. But the idea is to introduce WISE, rationale behind WISE. WISE is a women initiative for social entrepreneurship. It's a global initiative in Ashoka. It's not a program, it's a framework and it's a mindset. And we've been working very hard to try to really redefine success from a gender lens. And I will speak about this, but also with all the esteemed speakers today and our wonderful Ashoka Fellow moderator. You know, today is a very important session, dismantling systemic racism on a global level, the way forward. And it's not only timely, because it is timely and we have seen it across the TVs, but I also, my inner goal and my inner interest is also that women, social entrepreneurs in general, but also women social entrepreneurs, has found some systemic solutions to parts and parcels of the problem. And I think it is time that the world listens to them and hears what they say. But the objective of WISE, of the series of WISE it's been started yesterday. Today is the second day, and we have tomorrow. The objective of the series is to create a movement in order to change the narrative about women's success. To redefine success, and not to compare, not to say we are different than men. No, I think all social entrepreneurs share the same passion and wonder and really want to change the world. But I think because the mainstream definition of success was tied to business a little bit, and it was defined only as scale up, which meant a lot of people, we have redefined this to say there are more measurement for success. And a study that Ashoka has done for all our fellows showed and confirmed our belief. So for us, for WISE and for Ashoka, scale up is no longer how many people, it's really going up and changing laws and regulations and policies, which looks like you've just done one thing, which takes a lot of time and effort, but actually it affects generations and generations and millions of people. And I think we need to, and a lot of women work on changing policies and laws and regulations, and they do not just present it in a way that the world, the mainstream world, will understand. You change one law and you affect millions of people. Scaling out is really when you replicate, you franchise, and you go beyond with numbers or cities or countries. And I think everybody does it, whether it's men or women. And then there is the scaling deep, which I think also is part of many of our women fellows do it. Not that men don't do it, but a lot of us do it, which is really changing mindsets, patterns of behavior, and the way people behave and act and think. And again, we don't realize the impact of the scaling deep because you think, oh, I've just worked with maybe 2,000 to 200,000 people or 1 million people. But actually, when you change mindsets, again, you have an impact on the children, the grandchildren, the community for generations and generations. So we are trying with WISE and WISE Up to really change the narrative about definitions of success. We want to give credit to all the social entrepreneurs and especially women who have had great impact across history, but it has not been recognized, not because they are women, but because the definition of success has been very different than what it should be. This series is showcasing all these wonderful women, whether the moderators are an Ashoka Fellow and many of the guest speakers are Ashoka Fellows, which means they are all leading social entrepreneurs who had great impact in the world, but also other leaders in the field. And the idea of this series is to share the stories because we believe in storytelling in Ashoka and inspire others, but also our hope is that donors, policymakers, universities will listen to these stories, understand what we're talking about, and change how they fund and support and how they write about. Because in order to change mindsets and behavior, you need to invest a lot of time, but the impact is huge. And I think people should come to realize this and understand it, because I think it is extremely, extremely important. This session is a session led by Purvi Shah. I really hope I'm and she's an Ashoka Fellow, which she's a wonderful woman. She's a great leader. I will introduce her. But I have a soft spot to every Ashoka Fellow in the world, so I'm a little biased. But I think this conversation is incredibly important, as I said earlier, because this is the right time where we see not only America, but we just heard from a young lady from Brazil how even Black Lives Matter in Brazil is coming up in Europe, but also across the world. And I think it's very timely. But I also think it's also important because the burden of racism usually comes on mothers and daughters, and also a lot of the solutions comes from women, because, as I said, women choose causes that require changing of mindsets. Saying that, today we have Purvi Shah, founder of Movement Law Lab and Ashoka Fellow, and she will be leading this conversation with my dearest friend, fellow Morgan Dixon, founder of Girl Trek, Adriana Barbosa, founder of Preta Hub, and Angelo Zilio, founder of the Greening Youth Foundation. You will hear much more about their work, and I hope you will also hear how to pronounce their names correctly. I'm sorry if I mispronounce any name. People always call me different things. But before I give the floor to Purvi, I'd like to say a little bit more about her. The movement Law Lab, founded by Purvi, is to build a new generation of legal organizations and lawyers able to use the law to create social change. And I think a lot of us will think, shouldn't law do this? But I think we forgot. So I think it's great that, again, the defenders of heritage and you're reviving that. You're an experienced movement lawyer, civil rights litigator, policy advocate, and law professor. Wow, I'm scared now. She has a career at the intersection of law and social movements, which I think is great, needed. And so and in 2015, in the aftermath of the Ferguson uprisings, she co-founded Law for Black Lives, which I think I would like to learn a little bit more about that. I've read about it, but I think it's beautiful. I think law should be the tool to really get us our rights, all of us. She's also previously the director of the Birth Justice Institute at the Center for Constitutional Rights, and she co-founded the Community Justice Project of Florida Legal Services. As you will see, women, social entrepreneurs, Ashoka Fellows, we call them serial social entrepreneurs in a positive way. So, because as Purvi is doing here, whenever she found a problem, she did not hesitate, she took the initiative, and she decided to change the world and find solutions that are systemic and that are really long-term. So without any further ado, I would like to give the stage to my new friend, Purvi, and thank you so much for agreeing to do that. I will disappear now.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Iman, and it's a pleasure to be here with Wise Up and the series. What an amazing initiative to center the work of women entrepreneurs. And I'm so pleased, excited to be here with this panel who's starting to join us, Adriana, all the way from Brazil. We are also trying to get the rest of our panelists onto the session. Pandemic virtual moment if we did not have some technical difficulties. So thank you so much for the team behind the scenes that's working to fix everything. We're hoping now that our colleague Adriana is able to have interpretation, and just so we all are clear, this principle of language justice is so important that that we could not start this conversation without interpretation. So we appreciate your generosity in waiting. So I just want to jump right into it. We've lost a little bit of time, so I just want to start the conversation off. And Adriana, are you getting interpretation?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to start off with asking both of you, and we also have a third panelist who may be joining us at any moment. But we are in an unprecedented moment. We are in a global pandemic that has, unearthed or exacerbated every challenge that we have in our society, including racism. We are in a moment in which, we are seeing one of the largest amount of protests that are happening in the United States ever. We're seeing the global impacts of a movement for Black lives. And so I just wanted to start by asking both you, Angelou and Adriana, what does this moment mean to you? Arundhati Roy calls the pandemic a portal. So just curious, what have your reflections been from the last 3 to 4 months of this moment that we're living in? And maybe we'll start with you, Adriana.
Quais são os momentos da pandemia, né? Garotas falando.
Primeiro, quero agradecer o convite por a gente estar participando, apesar das questões tecnológicas e da tradução.
First of all, she'd like to thank everyone for the invitation, and despite the difficulties of technology and translation.
No Brasil, enfim, não está diferente do que vem ocorrendo nos outros países em relação à pandemia, que tem ressaltado as questões da desigualdade. Essa desigualdade afeta a população negra.
What is happening in Brazil is not very different from what is happening in other countries, especially as it points out to the inequalities in how the pandemic affects the Black population.
No meu caso, especificamente, eu venho de uma tradição familiar de mulheres negras.
I come from a Black women tradition.
E hoje eu tenho, na minha vida pessoal, os cuidados com a minha filha de 7 anos e com minha avó, que mora comigo, que tem mais de 80 anos.
And today I have to take care of my daughter, who is young, and my grandmother, who is in her 80s, late 80s.
Especificamente no meu trabalho, eu tenho apoiado empreendedores, artistas, pessoas pela perspectiva do desenvolvimento econômico. Então, eu estou olhando para os aspectos da economia em relação ao contexto do Covid.
In her work, she works with artists and entrepreneurs in economic development. And right now she's dealing with that and in the circumstance of COVID.
E a condição das mulheres negras, que são a maioria de empreendedoras no Brasil, é uma condição muito difícil nesse momento.
And the condition of women, especially Black women, at this moment is a very difficult situation that they face today.
E acho que é legal, assim, de falar que as mulheres negras são maioria no país em relação ao empreendedorismo.
Yeah, Black women are the majority of entrepreneurs in Brazil.
Então, hoje são 3 coisas que estão afetando: letramento digital e acesso à tecnologia.
3 things are affecting these women: digital literacy,
e infraestrutura de tecnologia, acesso à internet,
access to digital platforms,
acesso a crédito,
credit, access to credit,
e saúde mental.
And mental health.
Muitas mulheres em processos de depressão.
Many women in depression.
Então, são as 3 coisas que hoje eu atualmente venho me dedicando a trabalhar. Tenho apoiado mulheres com um fundo de recursos, chama Fundo de Emergências Econômicas.
These are the 3 aspects that she's been working on with women, and they have a fund of, como é que chama? Fundo de?
Emergências Econômicas.
An emergency fund, emergency economic fund that she's using to help these women.
Também suporte com profissionais da saúde mental.
Also providing support with mental health professionals.
E a gente está com uma parceria com o Facebook para apoiar os empreendedores a passar por o processo de digitalização.
And we also have a partnership with Facebook, helping women to have access to technology and digital technology.
Thank you for that grounding. Morgan, welcome to you. Sorry, you're also having technical difficulties, but I'll turn it to you, Angelou, to kind of answer. I mean, Adriana gave us a pretty complex answer, you know, both the context in Brazil, also kind of what her organization is doing and how they're approaching, and particularly the disproportionate impacts on Black women when it comes to this moment. I was curious if you could ground us a little bit in the work that you do and how you're seeing this moment and how it relates to your work, and then we'll get to you, Morgan.
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much for this audience and for this opportunity to kind of share our message. And I think the difficulty that we had in getting on this call is kind of indicative of this year and certainly of how we need to adjust and pivot and move,
Oi, Cindy, tô te ouvindo.
forward. So my feelings over the past 3 to 4 months has been a mixed bag, to say the least. I mean, this reckoning, if you will, of, you know, this anti-Black racism, you know, the disproportionate impacts of COVID on communities of color and low-income families, as well as the senseless killings of so many Black and brown, particularly Black people at the hand of police has really, you know, I feel admittedly a lot of anger. You know, there is, I feel when I see the protests and, you know, all the different things going on, it makes me feel I'm excited about this transformative yet challenging change that we're on the precipice of. But it's still it's really hard, you know. It's painful to know that, you know, 350 plus years, 400 years, and now, you know, of Black people living these injustices and inequality in this country, and now we're also seeing across the globe, and there's still so much work to be done. So I'm thankful that, you know, at Greenie Youth Foundation, we are attempting to really bridge that racial wealth gap by providing access to young people to work in the field that I focus on, because it's systemic. So we know it goes across all systems, the systemic racism. The system that I'm focusing on and I'm disrupting is the environmental field, which has been homogeneously white for so many years. And, you know, so just to kind of sum up really quickly, because I know our time has been abbreviated, but, you know, just continuing to do our work. We've been doing it for 15 years of providing access to young people of color, Black and brown people, to work in careers as it affects our planet. So it's just this movement right now has just really propelled us and empowered us and strengthened us to continue to do this work.
Morgan, I'll turn to you. I mean, I think this grounding, you know, we were meeting before, like, what does this moment mean to you, and how does it speak to the long-term work that you've been doing, and just, you know, like, how do we get grounded in this moment?
I almost started singing. That's how I get grounded in this moment. Yeah. But that happened to me before, and I was singing This Little Light of Mine, and they put it on CNN, and it was so bad, and I got so made fun of. Oh my God, you could totally see it. It's so bad. But that's how I get grounded. How do I get grounded? I mean, you know, I have a minority opinion here. I think it's good to slow down. I think we needed this moment of cleansing. I think we needed this beat in the rhythm and the pace of life to really to name what's important to us as a country, as a world, as families, and even to our quietest selves. And I have been deeply grateful for that moment. So my name's Morgan Dixon. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm calling now from Ghana, West Africa. I am African American. I was born and raised in California. I was born in Wichita, raised in California. So I'm definitely American through and through. I run the largest health organization for Black women in America. It's called Girl Trek. And our mission by this year is to get 1 million Black women to walk in the streets of their neighborhoods for better health, to reclaim space, which is really relevant now, and to connect with one another in times where loneliness is deadly. It really is. And so what does this moment mean? Listen, it means I told you so. That's what it meant. The planet is like, I told you so. Like, slow it down. You know, one of our members in California, she posted a picture up on Facebook, and she was walking with her son. She was taking a walk with her son, and the lily pads in her park were huge in the lake. And her son was like, what happened to the lily pads? And I was like, tell him the humans stopped messing with them. That's what happened to them for, 3 months. And I feel like that, what an opportunity to hit reset on social justice, to hit reset on environmental justice, to hit reset on work-life balance, to hit reset on family values. I'm super excited about this moment for that reason. Do I think that it's hugely problematic that it took this to get here, that it took someone getting murdered on film for us to reckon with social justice, for there to be a global pandemic before we knew how to work less than 70 hours a week? I'm sad that that's what it took, and I'm grateful for this moment to hit reset. So that's me.
Well, I appreciate that grounding. And I think what comes out from your comments, and I think we may have lost Angelou, so I hope they're working on getting her back in here. But I think what's really powerful to me about these different perspectives, right, whether we're investing in the visionary genius and ideas of Black women entrepreneurs in Brazil, or we're also investing in the wellness and the healing of Black women so that they can continue to hold our communities together and lead us forward with their genius. I wanted to know if you guys could both talk a little bit more about, this challenge of systemic racism, right? I mean, this is an entrenched global system that many people benefit off of. And it's a system that stems from colonialism, slavery. And we may be in a new moment of reckoning around systemic racism, particularly anti-Black racism. And each of you have wildly different approaches to addressing that. And I think the audience would probably really be well served to understand why. Why did you choose to address the challenge of systemic racism in the way that you do? And Adriana, maybe we can start with you, particularly, you work in Brazil to build networks of Black women entrepreneurs, and particularly focusing on kind of the collective of Black women entrepreneurs and connecting them to each other and lifting their leadership. I'm curious if you can share more about, why that approach really spoke to you. And we heard you say earlier that, Black women are the largest population of entrepreneurs in Brazil. But beyond that, I think you're trying to get at this question of not just any type of innovation, but innovation that actually solves the problems that we're trying to deal with in our society. So Adriana, I'd come to you, and then I'd love for Angelou and Morgan to also share a little bit more about the choices you've made in your work.
Porque o Brasil ele teve processo de 400 anos de escravidão e a gente está esse ano completando 132 anos pós-período abolição.
Brazil has had 400 years of slavery, and this year we're celebrating only 130 years of abolition.
E o processo de desigualdade racial e social no Brasil, ele foi estruturado e ele foi institucionalizado.
And the racism in Brazil has been structured and institutionalized.
O Brasil é a única população que tem maioria populacional negra, mas que é vista como grupos minorizados.
Brazil is the only country where the majority of people are Black, and Black people are considered a minority group.
E esse olhar de grupo minorizado, ele é sistêmico em vários setores. Então, acesso à educação, à moradia, a mercado de trabalho.
And this view, this understanding it's reproduced in several levels: education, health, housing, in all sectors.
Quando eu comecei a trabalhar com o tema de empreendedorismo, de desenvolvimento econômico da população negra,
when she began working with economic development of the Black population,
eu descobri que não dava só para simplesmente executar o meu trabalho, mas ajudar a construir um contexto e um cenário em que a população negra pudesse prosperar economicamente.
When she started working with economic development for the Black population, she understood that it was not enough to work there. She had to work in the whole environment, the whole ecosystem, in order to change.
Então, pensar em políticas públicas, influenciar
public policy, influence public policy,
em construir uma narrativa nos veículos de comunicação do potencial da população negra,
create a narrative in media about the potential of the Black population,
uma cultura empreendedora através da educação,
start a culture of entrepreneurship through education.
Dados, a gente tem se dedicado a dados, os dados, a ciência ajuda a contar essa história.
And we've worked very heavily on data, because data helps us tell the stories.
E estabelecer parceria com iniciativa privada e com universidades.
And we've established partnerships with the private sector and with universities.
Ou seja, não era só desenvolver empreendedoras, mas construir um cenário para que essas empreendedoras pudessem ter um ambiente para empreender.
So it wasn't enough to work to help these women in their entrepreneurial efforts, but it was to build a scenario, an environment where these women could
eu só quero dar o último exemplo.
One last example.
Quando eu fazia o processo de captação de recursos para a Feira Preta, para o evento, eu tinha muita respostas negativas por parte das empresas em patrocinar um evento que se chamava Feira Preta.
An example is when she would fundraise for this annual event that she carried on, which was a Black fair. She had a lot of difficulties raising money with something with that name, with an event with that name.
Então, aí eu comecei a questionar que, na verdade, não tinham pessoas negras dentro das empresas com poder de decisão, com tomada de decisão.
So she started realizing that there were no people, Black people, in these companies with power of decision.
Então, a gente começa um trabalho de influenciar o processo de equidade racial dentro das empresas, inclusão de negros dentro das empresas.
So we started a program an effort to include Black people in companies, in businesses.
Much. Maybe I'll turn to you, Angelou. I mean, I think that sharing more about this investment in youth, particularly, right? I mean, we know about the sort of the lack of diversity and the lack of centering Black life and the impact of climate on Black people. But why youth? Why did you invest in your in youth of color, particularly?
Yeah, mainly because as a child, I was never encouraged to pursue careers in the environmental sector or the outdoors, or even though I had like this great, love and, my characteristics, everything kind of pointed to me maybe doing something in the outdoors and in conservation. It was just something I loved. But because of the way I looked, my parents just didn't feel safe with me pursuing a career in that field because they didn't see anybody that looked like themselves, nor did they see anybody that looked like me. So the last thing they wanted was to send their little brown girl out to this field. So as I got older, I realized that and I landed in that sector doing like farmland preservation. So these are all things that typically Black people don't explore these career pathways because we don't see ourselves, doing this work. So that, I went to an all girls high school, all women's college. So I've always been kind of trained with that mindset that if you don't see something, you need to be that agent of change. You need to be the one to do that. And that was really the impetus for Greening Youth Foundation, because I wanted to make sure that there weren't any more Black and brown young girls growing up thinking that this isn't something for them. I wanted to provide, there's such an access equity issue in this environmental field. As Adriana said, I'm actually fortunate, I'm happy right now that with this anti-Black racism is being called out, because for so long we've been tiptoeing around the issue, like slavery is something that, we can't really discuss. It's embarrassing, so we are now owning the history, good, bad, or ugly, but we're using it to propel us forward. And now we're seeing, through calling out this anti-Black racism, that, we can now say that there's so few people doing this type of work. There's so few Black people in this field. Why? Why? Is it a marketing issue? Is it implicit bias? Like, what are these reasons why there's no pipeline? Why aren't we training these young people at a young age to see the role that they can play in sustainability, in being stewards of all these natural resources? So that's in fact what Greening Youth Foundation was all about. And that was the impetus for it, just making sure, like, I can't sleep unless I know that we've gotten to a place where, all young people, Black and brown, Native Americans, are now able to see their role and, could move forward in whatever desire they have in this field, and are not held back because of the way that they looked. So that was one of the strong impetuses for moving this forward, Greening Youth Foundation.
Yeah, it's such a powerful clarity of purpose. Morgan, I mean, the largest health organization in the United States, and one that is really centered in the power of women helping each other, Black women helping each other. And I'm curious if you could share more about, there are a lot of different ways to attack the challenge of health disparities and the health of Black women. And I'm really curious as to, this particular way, this collective way, if you can share more about, what influenced that and why it spoke to you to address the challenge of health disparities for Black women in this way.
But first I'll say, Angelou, I just realized who you are. I emailed you like years ago. Somebody.
What?
Yeah. Sorry, we'll talk offline, but I just realized you're doing such important work, like employing. I just literally realized who you are. That's so amazing.
I did WhatsApp you and I was like, hey, Morgan.
What an honor.
Like, who is this?
No, what an honor. What an honor to be with you. Yes. Well, let me answer your first question. I don't actually believe it's my role to dismantle systemic racism. I stop being racist. Like, I don't think that's my role. It's not. I will not commit my labor to it. It has destroyed mightier women than me, and it's not something I'm interested in dismantling. If America wants the benefit and the value of Black people in this country, then they will do better. And by they, I mean white people who have created this country in a way that disadvantages me. I have a lot to give, and as do the women on this phone, as do many, many, many people across this great country. And that's an asset, and we better start looking at it as that, as a collective. So that brings me to the other question. So I had no idea how to answer your first question. I was like, whoa, I don't know how to dismantle anti-Black racism, because I love myself, so I don't have it, I don't own it, I don't want it. I'm not racist against myself. It's not me to dismantle the master's house. Like, come on.
It's not our job.
Yeah. So that was the answer to the first question. And I'm not mad about it. Like, we're at a decision point. Like, we can build like a completely separate society of people who would like to be inclusive and loving toward one another. And I hope that that's not the case. I hope that's not the case, because it's not efficient. And I'm a Capricorn. I like to be practical. So I'm just saying, People can pull it together. So I'm waiting, I'm waiting. Listen, I like to break bread. I like to be loving and kind to people, but I will not submit to my labor, my energy, my love to those who hate me. We were just, we had the great honor, it's probably like 3 weeks ago, to interview Angela Davis and Nikki Giovanni, two legends in American literature and American politics. And it was the one thing that Nikki Giovanni said. She shut me down so quick. We were talking about standards of beauty, because we weren't talking about this. We were talking about standards of beauty, and she was like, "Well, you better stop asking people who hate you if you're beautiful." I was like, exactly. So to that question, I won't ask people who hate me to accept me. I won't try and dismantle systems that were specifically designed for people who look like me not to participate, like legislatively and politically designed and economically designed. So that's not where I want to put my energy. Where I do want to put my energy is collectively organizing. And this is not a separatist argument. I'm a student of history. I understand the pathways available. This is me saying I actually am not requesting that anymore. What I am requesting is that every single person who has the resource, the willpower, the creativity and imagination to imagine Black liberation, to imagine resourced schools, children, community, join Girl Trek, and that we can walk and talk together and figure out how to bring the resources together in collective action. So Girl Trek is on its surface a health organization that encourages women to walk 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week for improved health outcomes. Beyond that, what we know is when we have an energized base of women walking in the same direction. Actually, Psychology Today did a really great interview or a report one time that said when Black women are walking together in such cases as Girl Trek, that actually the rhythm of walking together facilitates collective collective action planning, like this kind of being on one accord. And I was like, yeah, of course. It's like, of course, psychology. So what we do from that is we create a vanguard of freedom fighters, of women who first committed the disciplined time to care for themselves and their families in a way that is responsible and that is progressive. And then collectively, a group of people who want to build community together regardless.
It's such a powerful reframe. It's such a powerful articulation of how to just, to me, this is the genius of Black women leaders, is both to take the question, to flip it on its head and to offer an alternate perspective. And so I wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit more. And it doesn't come out of being cute or being innovative. It comes out of lived experience and a clarity of dignity and what it means to truly show up for yourself and your people in a way that the legacy of the sort of way our society is shaped forces people of color, and particularly Black women, to have to do. So I wanted to speak for a moment to the young people that might be listening, the young Black women that are sitting in their communities wondering, is there, when we look at the world of innovation or many of the different worlds that the three of you occupy, right? You are probably have had the opportunity to sit in many community centers and community meetings, and also in the halls of power in different ways. And I just, there's a cost to it. For me in my journey, it took me a long time to learn how to be grounded in myself and my history and where I come from, and to trust my own vision, and to know that I could build things with my own hands, and that if I truly got out of my own way, that's all my own genius. I could channel my own creativity. And I'm curious, what advice do you have for young women that may be kind of sitting on the cusp of their journeys, trying to figure out how do they let their genius forward? How do they let their creative visions come forward? What's the wisdom that you might have to offer? So maybe this time we'll start with, if we can keep these shorter, so we only have about 10 more minutes after this, and I've got one last lightning round, so if we can keep the answers a little shorter. So Adriana, we'll start with you.
Eu acho que por processo de eu conseguir me libertar quando eu conheci as minhas histórias, as histórias que eu aprendi nos livros no Brasil, nas histórias dos negros.
I learned to my genius reading stories by Black people.
Histórias reais, não histórias construídas para controle da nossa potência.
Real stories, not stories that were built to control, but real stories, life stories.
O Brasil teve um processo muito importante, porque a gente só chega na maioria populacional por um processo de autodeclaração, e a autodeclaração só veio porque a gente conheceu as nossas histórias.
Brazil had a strange process, because in the census, people would self-declare their race. And the only reason that now there's an awareness of race is because they heard stories, they learned stories of people.
E hoje, uma geração de jovens negros de 18 anos, eles já nascem pretos. Essa geração já é preta.
And young people, 18 years old, they wake up, I mean, they're born and they know they're Black.
É uma grande
they identify themselves. It's a huge transformation, she says.
Então, acho que é a gente saber das nossas histórias de reis e rainha, das nossas dinastias e ancestralidade, da onde a gente vem, conhecer as nossas histórias.
We have to know our ancestors, stories of kings and queens, and know our stories to know ourselves.
Sure. I think for me, the advice that I would give the young ladies on this call is the importance of self-love and self-care. It's really important, because as a young woman, you get so wrapped up into it. It's just our nature, to get wrapped up in these big causes and issues and whatever it is that you're fighting to disrupt or undo, or, causes you want to help. But you lose yourself in it sometimes, to the point where it becomes unhealthy for you. Because I'm speaking personally, when I saw this glaring, gap of knowledge in our communities around this environmentalism, I went all in, and to the point where I was not being a great steward of myself, so it caused me to get very sick, to the point where I was almost out of here, which my therapist later was like, then you wouldn't be here to help anybody, your family or anyone. So understanding, and Morgan kind of touched on it, that, understanding your own gauge, and understanding that the importance of establishing a pace that's sustainable for you, so that you are making sure there's time for yourself. There's time to, for meditating, yoga, whatever it is that you do to reset, because these causes and these issues are going to continue. But, you need to make sure there's a balance. This is a marathon, so, you have to really focus on yourself amidst all the things that you're trying to help and serve, people that you're trying to serve. So loving yourself, and also investing in yourself through self-care.
Yep. You want me to go? All right. So if you are listening to this and you are a young person, or any person, and I say that actually in jest, because I think people think innovation is a young people's game, and it's not. It's not. And in fact, I felt some level of discomfort, because I didn't start Girl Trek until, which is crazy because 35 is young, but I was 35 and I was way over the hill. And I was just like, how is everybody in social innovation 27 and a half? I just don't understand why that is the case, because I think creative thinking is best served with wisdom. And so I want to encourage everyone out there. And to answer the question, if you are a young person watching this, you are as qualified to make transformational change. You have to know, you have to believe that that's true, that every great movement has started or been amplified by student movements. For everyone listening, I just want to encourage people, get off the sidelines. Get off the sidelines. And what that looks like for you is going to be completely different than what that looks like for me. And I'm reminded there's we do something called Black History Boot Camp, which is a podcast. I invite you all to listen to it, particularly if you don't know that much about Black history. It's me and my best friend literally going for a walk talking about Black history. It's hilarious and way too personal. So I invite you all to listen to it. But one of the women we featured was a woman named Gloria Gilmore. And Gloria Gilmore was, anybody know her name? If you do, put it in the chat. Gloria Gilmore is one of my heroes now, but didn't know her a year ago. Gloria Gilmore single-handedly funded, almost single-handedly funded, the Montgomery bus boycotts. And it's insane how she did it. She started cooking. And with her food, with her cooking, she started buying or hiring drivers to drive the essential workers to work, the nurses, the lawyers, or whatever, so that they didn't have to take the bus because they had to go to work to support the community. Who would have thought that this woman, who had lots of kids, who had all sorts of things, could be the key philanthropist for Dr. King, for Rosa Parks, for all of these people whose names are at the tip of our tongue when we talk about civil rights movement. So when I tell you to get off the sidelines, I'm not telling you to get on the podium. I'm telling you to figure out what you uniquely do well. If you made a list of 5 things that you do well and bring you great joy, make a list of 5 more, then make a list of 5 more, then make a list of 5 more, because you have 20 things that you do well in life. I'll be the first to tell you you do. Then group them together and say, okay, well, I'm great. I have a lot of communication on here. Let me start a podcast. Oh, great. I have a lot of art on here. Let me start to make quilts for the homeless. Like, I'm not sure what it is you do, but do something and then deploy that toward justice. And we need you in the fight for that now. Deploy your skill, your talent, your love toward justice. And that is all over the world. That is all over the world. It doesn't require what we did with starting Girl Trek. It didn't require us asking for anything. It didn't require us. In fact, we were horrible fundraisers because we were like, well, you know, if you don't want to fund us, like, I'm not going to convince you. You probably want this opportunity because we're going to change the world together if you do. And we could use resources, but we didn't need it. And I'm saying, like, you have everything you need. Like, I wish more people understood that. As someone who is now living in a third world country, anybody in America has so many opportunities, and we better lean on that kind of value to be change makers, as opposed to waiting for someone to do something. So listen, I used to hate Booker T. Washington in college because I was so radical in college. I was like, what? We don't got no bootstraps. We don't even got no boots. It's just like, leave us alone, right? And now I am wiser, which is why it requires all to engage. And what I realize now is it's not about boots or bootstraps. It's about willpower. It's about dignity. And so you have both of those things, and we can make change together, and we can get the boots. We can get the boots. Like, that's easy. So those are some of my thoughts. Is just literally get in a game, try stuff. When we started Girl Trek, we were throwing things at the wall. We were like, how about an inspirational T-shirt company? Like, okay, we kind of still do that. We're like, okay, how about a blog? You know, so all sorts of things. And then we realized we better kind of turn in and figure out what we personally need. That's the last thing I'll say. Brian Stevenson is a genius. Maybe you all know him. If you don't, watch his TED Talk.
Amazing.
Yeah, he always talks about proximity, right? And I never really loved the term proximity. I think I told him maybe. Like, I didn't know, because I'm not proximate to the problem. Like, the police are trying to kill me. Like, I'm in it. You know what I mean? Like, but I understand what he means. He means get close to the problem, and the people who are closest to the problem are better able to solve for it. And I am very close to the problem, but I'm saying, like, the frame is not for me. And I'm saying but the bigger point he's making is there are things that you are uniquely positioned to solve for. There are things in your home life, things in your personal experience, your deepest, darkest moments, sadness, fears. There are things in your community outside of your front window. There are things in your family. There are secrets there are things that are destroying us from the inside and the outside. Pick one and solve it. Small task.
Uh-oh, we don't hear Pervy.
Oh, perfect.
Mute myself. It's like a classic virtual failure. I wanted to thank all of you. Morgan, that was really powerful. And I think we've had, in a short amount of time, we've covered quite some ground in this panel. We've heard about the nuances of how systemic racism is impacting Black communities across the world. And we've heard, your visions and your strategies for how you're working with that. But most importantly, I think there have been some important kind of reframes that I just want to lift back up for the audience. One, this idea that there's a role for everybody. If we are talking about disrupting a system of racism, that requires both there to be dignity and dignity and wellness for people impacted by those systems. It also means that the rest of us also need to make sure we're doing our part and getting off the sidelines and being a part of movements, of collectives that are trying to address those problems. And then I've also heard this, this powerful invitation to get grounded in what it is that you might be good at, what it is that you have to offer, and to see entrepreneurship or innovation outside of this sort of limited purview that sometimes we're told in some of the spaces we're in, and to say that there can actually be deep innovation and deep genius from the everyday person, and for us to really expand our concept of who might be able to lead, and who is leading. So I just want to thank you all for your time and for persevering through all of the technical difficulties. It's certainly been an enjoyable conversation. I would love to go on a walk with you guys sometimes and deepen these conversations. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And to our audience, thank you for being here. And we hope to see you on the internet sometime soon.